So the videos that are entitled Let Us Talk are usually going to be talking about recent events in the world and in the United States. This video for the date's going to be January 22nd, 2025, is the week of the presidential inauguration and the week of a few other things that we should talk about. One of the things that we're going to talk about today is the ceasefire in Palestine and Israel, the history of such ceasefires, and what is currently going on there. We're going to discuss some aspects of the Trump administration and their plans they already say they're implementing. And of course, I'm going to take a brief pause to just ask some people some questions about things they may or may not know. And there may also be a point in this video where you feel slightly attacked. I promise it's not meant to be a personal attack or meant to be anything where I want you to be discouraged. I just want you to think a little bit about what you could be doing to better our situations. Now let's go ahead and start talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict as it pertains to the last couple weeks. A ceasefire has been implemented in between Hamas and Israel, but has been like a lot of ceasefires. It seems like it's not actually going to mean anything and comes, coincidentally as the same week as the president, Donald Trump, was being inaugurated. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get talking about the Israel-Palestine situation. A ceasefire has been implemented there between Hamas and Israel, coming just like the ceasefire or ending of operations in 2009 before Barack Obama's administration came into power. This is similar to that, as Israel has also signed this ceasefire agreement just as the Trump administration is getting ready to come into power. As far as everybody knows and is saying, this ceasefire is exactly like the one that Hamas agreed to back in May and July of 2024, with a few very, very minor stipulations. But nonetheless, this is just another way to point the finger at the Biden administration for having the ability, as we all know, to put pressure on Israel to stop its military action in Gaza and quit the killing of innocent people, but didn't because of United States undivided support for the Israeli government and all of its actions there. For those of you who don't know, before the Obama administration took power and was inaugurated into office, they, similar to how Trump sent his man to the negotiations of the ceasefire deal, they pretty much said, hey, we want this to stop because we don't want this looming over the fact that we're coming into the presidency. And the Israeli leaders at that time even said so much as, after the inauguration, no one will even remember that there was a ceasefire. And that seems to be the case as of right now. In Rafah, a child was killed by an Israeli sniper, which links up with what we know about Israeli soldiers targeting children from that article in the New York Times that we talked about the last Let Us Talk episode. Israeli has military-raided a refugee camp known as Jenin that is now nearly uninhabitable because of the destruction there. Settlers are burning Palestinian cars and attacking them. At least 10 people have died since the ceasefire, including that child. And aid is now flowing into Gaza, but, you can see the pictures that are flowing through the screen right now, that there's really not enough aid that could help rebuild Gaza as much as it needs, especially since Israel is still blocking aid from the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the UNRWA, which is harming recovery efforts and is going to. There's also the situation of the Trump administration coming in and the people it has that are going to now be overseeing this conflict, who are very dangerous in their beliefs, one of whom is getting ready to visit Gaza in the upcoming weeks to make sure that the ceasefire is being implemented, and has said that even though Trump himself has said he has doubts about this agreement, that he is going to try his hardest to make sure that the second phase of the agreement, which is arguably the most important phase, will be continued to implement and that the ceasefire will hold. Here's a long history of ceasefires and resolutions permitting the ending of violence between Israel and Palestine, mostly, as we know, between Israel just wiping out Palestinians. But here's a brief overview. Ceasefire is agreed upon. Israel breaks the ceasefire. Everyone ignores it. Palestine reacts in some way or form. It is met with retribution of 1,000 times, worse than whatever they did, as was with October 7th, and then the ongoing onslaught of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. I'd like to hope that the Trump administration might have some sort of way of preventing this happening, but facts and evidence are showing that there really isn't any hope on that regard. And you can say pessimism or whatever, but we can really just call it realism. But recently, during a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing, the UN ambassador nominated by Trump, Stefanik, stated that she does believe that Israel has a biblical right to Palestinian territory in the West Bank. This is pretty beholding of the Christian Zionist views, which are much stronger than the Jewish Zionist views. If you want to know more about Christian Zionism and why they want Jews in Israel, you can look into it yourself. But it's a pretty, quite frankly, disgusting idea they have of why they want Jews in Israel. But nonetheless, what's really here to focus on is it does not matter if we are talking about the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, the Buddhist four truths, the Jainist five truths, anything from Hinduism ideology, any sort of religious text. Your religion and your religious beliefs do not have a place in politics or the decisions that affect masses of people. The fact that a woman who is going to be the United Nations ambassador for the United States believes that Israel has a right to land because of the Bible is scary, it's unsettling, and it's wrong. No matter your religion, you do not have a right to this at all. And this goes back to the ideas that I talked about in the last video, but no matter who had the land first, no matter who was there first, no matter who wasn't there first, no matter what, you never have the right to murder people just to be able to take something from them. That's something we're taught from a very early period on, from children. You can't beat up someone because you want their bike. You can't murder someone because you want their money. You cannot kill people because you want their land. But we have people in our government and a mass amount of people in our society and the Israeli society and the Israeli government who truly believe that they have a right to murder these people and expel them, as Zionism believes that there has to be expulsion. There's a lot of text that proves this. And this is not okay. It's not right in any sense of the form. There has to be an agreement where two different types of people can live in the same land without all of this murder and bloodshed. And it begins with the United States ceasing to send arms to Israel. The Biden administration in its last days sent $8 billion of arms to Israel as the ceasefire was being negotiated. You know what type of message that sends? That sends, hey, right now you have to be quiet, but as soon as the smoke blows over, you can get right back to what you were doing before. And eventually, that land that you want and those people you want gone will be gone and you will have it. As always, in the description, there is going to be links to how you can help Palestine. I'll go over those at the end of this video. Now, just very briefly, let's go ahead and discuss things that you can be doing and people who are, quite frankly, put on a pedestal and worshipped could be doing to help society. First, we're going to be talking about you. And we're going to be mentioning more specifics as we get into the Trump administration's policies that have been announced this week. But for now, let's just talk generally about you. How many times in the last year, if you're an American, if you're not an American, you can consider this to your representatives as well. But how many times in the last year have you sent an email to your representative, whether at the state level, the federal level, or just within your town or city that you live in? How many times have you called them? How many times have you gone to their office and requested a meeting with them to discuss things that you would like to see change, policies that they support or don't support that you would like to see them support? How many times have you done that? How many times have you had friends over and you brought up these issues? Not in the usual issue of, I can't believe we elected Donald Trump who's so racist, which probably he is. Or Biden, wow, he's just a drooling buffoon, which he probably is. But how often have you actually discussed the real issues and things that you can do about it? How many times have you said something along the lines of, the middle class is shrinking and we're all getting poorer and I have so much credit card debt that I don't know what to do about it. And I just want prices to go down, or I just want the education system to change, or the healthcare system is a massive disaster, like we just talked about in the last one of these videos. What have you been doing to help? You can organize. There's always an organization in your community that is working with people to give you these things. You don't need to tire yourself out. It's not something that takes every moment of every day. I don't spend every moment of every day doing these videos or organizing or being politically active. It's a big part of my life, but it's not every day. I have stuff out of it. And you could be too. So what have you done to help? Now, that all being said, you are not at blame or at fault for the way things are. The people who we can name, we know who they are. The very elite who are hoarding all the wealth for themselves, making issues and policies that we disagree with, the general public, but people feel powerless. I've discussed it before in the election reaction video, or maybe it was in the state of political affairs in America video. But while voting may not be a good way of getting representatives who are going to listen to you, and I want to clarify that, I do not mean that the election system is rigged. Once again, going into these studies by Thomas Ferguson and Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page, what I mean by that is elite interest floods money into the political domain all the way down to the state and city level, that your choices of governing officials really doesn't matter because as soon as they're in office, they have received so much money that they're going to do what the elite interest want. And the only time you get what you want is when it overlaps with the elite interest. So just to clarify that for anyone who's ever been confused. But there are still ways to get what you want done. We've seen it throughout the course of American history. I mentioned it in the labor movement video that you need to unionize. You need to organize. You need to look beyond your differences. Stop calling Trump supporters stupid. Stop calling liberals stupid. Stop calling people fools or ignorant or thinking that someone is lesser than you because they hold beliefs that you disagree with. Are there ideologies out there that are terrifying? Are there bigots out there? Absolutely. But the way to deal with these people is to educate them and to show them how they are wrong, not to make them feel bad and not to shame them. Because whenever you do that, people just double down and we get to where we are today. Something I have a real big problem with in American society is celebrities. I really don't get it. I don't get worshiping musicians. I don't get worshiping actors or actresses. I really don't get worshiping people who are just reality TV stars. I don't understand it. I don't get why you let them influence your views. I just don't. Most of them are, as it turns out, in the last decade or so we have found out, are disgusting people who should not be admired at all. But these people hold great power. How do they hold great power? It's not in the money they have, although that can be part of it. The majority of their power comes from how many people they can reach. Now just think for a moment about any of the top pop stars today. There's a few who you can look out to, a few from the old days and a few who are still going on right now at the peak of their popularity. Think of how much money they charge for tickets to their concerts and how many times they sell out those concerts and how many people are at those sold out concerts. Think about what they could do if they said, come to Washington, D.C., where we will provide food and water for everyone who is going to be there, and we are going to protest at the Capitol. We are going to disrupt traffic. We are going to peacefully demonstrate until we get healthcare reform. And then they went down the list of things they wanted in healthcare reform. For instance, implementing Bernie Sanders' ideas for Medicare for all, a single-payer reform, much like that of Germany, France, other countries around the world. And you could have the actual list there. I can present one if anybody ever wants to see it. If you disrupt people's lives, specifically the politicians' lives that much, if you disrupt and stop lives across America and just interrupt everything, these people could be doing so much more instead of just tweeting or being like, ooh, Trump bad, or ooh, we don't like Biden, and just playing into the partisan politics that don't really affect their lives anymore. But that is just one way they could actually change lives. And one of the many reasons that I truly, truly dislike the celebrity realm of the United States. Finally, let's go ahead and talk about the Trump administration and things it has implemented in the last few days as it has taken power, including a record number of executive orders that are already being fought by legal associations across America, as well as 22 different states that have sued now, and we'll see how that goes. But let's talk about two major issues. The LGBTQ community, specifically trans people, have been under attack by the right wing for a long time. Donald Trump's administration has said they're going to implement the federal policy of only recognizing two genders. And the other that we're going to focus on is the ongoing war against immigrants and the stopping of immigrants, the deportation of immigrants, and so on and so forth. Both of these two issues are absolutely scary to think about. It's scary to think that the protection of citizens in this country, whether they originated from here, whether they moved here in search of a better life, or whether they have a sexual orientation that you don't particularly understand, because if you say you don't agree with it, that doesn't really make sense because people are born this way. There's enough science to back this up. I know we pick and choose when we trust science, but people are just born how they're born. They can't change it. And even if it was something they chose, people still, for choices that are not affecting you in any sort of way, still deserve respect and the same human dignity that everyone else does. However, these are not real issues that Republicans, or for that matter, Democrats, care about. These are just massive distractions in the implementation of a culture war that is imaginary. There definitely is a lot of people out there who don't get the whole LGBTQ community and are who definitely in need of education so they don't say or do hateful things and preach rhetoric that is destructive. But at the end of the day, we're all just human beings trying to get by. The issues we actually are seeing that actually are something that we need to address aren't trying to stop people from living their lives, whether they be trans or not, whether they be immigrants or not, whether they be something else. These disgusting policies aren't actually going to change anything. In fact, because of the corporate interest in keeping immigrants in the United States, I would be betting a silver dollar that the Trump administration is going to quietly take away all of the things it's implementing over the last years, or it's going to quietly lose these legal battles and not really cry about it too much. Because immigrants mean cheap labor and corporations like cheap labor, and so they're going to push back hard against the Trump administration's policies on this idea. There's already been several wars in between the conservatives and the Republican office. When it comes to transgender rights, these are just human rights. Transgender people have the same right to life and the same right to healthcare as everyone else does. And the fact that we're disallowing this or fighting against it is disgusting. And like I said, none of these are real issues that are going to change or help Americans at all. If you stop immigrants from coming in or deport massive amounts of people, if you stop transgender people from allowing to feel comfortable in their own skin and getting care that matches up with their identity, that's not going to stop inflation. That's not going to stop the lack of jobs. It's not going to stop the rising cost of living, and it's not going to stop the debt that we see every single day. There's no political party that is actually fighting for any of these things. It wouldn't have been the Harris administration, and it's not going to be the Trump administration. In fact, just like the last time he was in office, I would be willing to bet the only thing Donald Trump's going to get is a massive tax cut for the top 10%, as well as some laws that are going to discriminate against people who are just trying to live their lives. The United States is in a lot of trouble. People don't talk about the real reasons it's in trouble. We talk about fascism. We talk about the hate groups that are absolutely there. And we talk about a lot of the problems with society. But we don't talk about the real issue that's on the horizon. The United States is on the brink of economic collapse. And we're getting to the point of the next time we have an economic collapse, it's probably going to be as bad as the Great Depression. And things are going to be so terrible that however bad you think things are, they're going to be 100 times worse. That's why it comes up to me about, what are you doing to help? What are you doing to combat this stuff? You should have been protesting during the Biden administration, just like you should be protesting during the Trump administration. Because these are things that we actually need to stop. The healthcare problem, the education reform, the stopping of price gouging by massive corporations, the unifying and support of unifying people all over the country, whether it be McDonald's or Barnes & Noble or Starbucks or Amazon. These are all things that we need to be working together towards, because if we don't unify right now, we are going to see a massive collapse. And the things that happen after a massive economic collapse are far worse than anything you think Donald Trump could do right now. He's a 78-year-old man, almost 79. If you think he's going to make himself into a dictator and try to rule the world with the last 6 years of his life, you're highly mistaken. Quit making fun of him for the Gulf of America. Quit talking about the Panama Canal or Greenland. Identify them as what they are: distraction tactics from the true problem. The rich in this country are going to continue to steal from the poor and the working classes. So many people in this country are food insecure. About 67% of people are one major medical problem away from being in debt for the rest of their life or declaring bankruptcy. About 30% of people who declare bankruptcy because of problems due with medical debt. 3% of those people do it because of cancer. The majority of Americans who get cancer or any other serious medical concern are now focusing on crowdfunding to pay their debts away and are not doing it through the usual terms. If we look at the true definition of unemployment, meaning employment is something that not only is your job where you go every day, but it also fulfills your needs as to the standards of living, it would be about 27%. A more specific definition has it a little bit above 40. These are things that you need to look at. However bad things are right now, however stressed you may be, think about if you know for a fact that this week you're going to have food. Think about if you know for a fact that in the next month you're going to have a place to live, and that's not something you need to worry about. On the other hand, if these are things you need to worry about, I will hope for the best that you can find the organizations within your community to help you, because God knows there is a war on them just as much as there's a war on everything else. Once again, just to summarize this video before I get to the final points, the Trump administration is using a culture war and is fighting against immigrants and discriminating against immigrants and trans people to get you to stop from thinking about the real issues, about why it is your job isn't paying you enough to where you can live on it, to think about why it is that your school costs so much, to think about why it is that healthcare is such a disaster. We need to stand by our immigrant brothers and sisters and our trans folk. We need to make sure that we are supporting these people in these tough times just as much as we need to support our union brothers and sisters and everyone else in the entire United States who are fighting the good fight. Please look into organizations that are organizing in your community and reach out to your representatives about things that you would like to see change. Please start to do more and start to demand more from any sort of celebrity, no matter the type, that you see and you like, whatever it is. Make sure that they understand that you and the society they are a part of needs more. Because when it comes, the storm that's on the horizon, when it comes, people aren't going to be able to buy tickets anymore. And people aren't going to be able to go see movies. In fact, you'll be lucky if you can buy food off the shelf every week. Palestine is in rubble. Before the attacks by Israel, after October 7th, people were saying, and by people I mean humanitarian resources, were saying that after the last attacks in 2018, that Gaza was in need of 5 years of repair in order to get back to where it was before then. Now who knows where it's at. The first link in the description is a link for the United States Campaign for Palestinian Rights. There is one of the places where you can find your representatives and you can have them generate an email for you, or you can make a personal one yourself. Either way, they will provide the links to contacting your representatives, whether by phone or by email. You can also donate to them in order to help take action and continuation against the atrocities that we have seen. And unfortunately, my gut tells me we'll continue despite the ceasefire. The second link will be the World Food for Gaza from the World Food Organization. You can also donate there. They send food directly into Gaza, including the aid trucks that are getting in now to be able to feed Gazans, especially in northern Gaza, where we are pretty sure there's a famine. Please look into yourself and think about all the things you could do. And overall, just be kind to each other. We're entering a scary time that we've been in for a while, but we can only say it's probably about to get worse. Thank you for watching.